I'd like to call to order the regular governing board meeting of the Jefferson Elementary School District, June 17th, 2020 at 7:03 p.m. And can we please have the call to order and, members present?
Clayton Koo.
Here.
Marie Brizuela.
Here.
Maybelle Monio is not present. Manufo Leah Inga Anuai is not present. And Shaquille Ali.
Here. Thanks very much. And can we have Mr. Vidales lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Gladly. We'll wait for the flag to show up.
Nice.
I won't ask you to stand, but if you like, you may. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so at this time, the board governance team, which includes the superintendent and all the board members, will review our governance team meeting guidelines. And everyone can just give a thumbs up when they're finished choosing their guideline that they're focusing on. All right, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 And that is unanimous. Okay, we actually have Trustee Manio. Do you agree with approving the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, so that's still unanimous. Thank you and welcome. Let's see. Right now, we will have a public hearing on the district reserves in excess of minimum requirements. The governing board of the Jefferson Elementary School District will hear public comments on the district reserves in excess of minimum requirements. And this is item 6A. So we will open this public hearing at 7:06. And was there any correspondence on this matter?
No, I do not have any.
All right, thank you very much. So we will close this hearing at 7:07. The next item is public hearing item B, 6B. Public hearing on fiscal year 2020-21 proposed budget. The governing board of the Jefferson Elementary School District will hear public comment on the fiscal year 2020-21 proposed district budget. And we will begin this public hearing at 7:07. And any correspondence?
I did not receive any correspondence.
Okay, thank you. So we will close this public hearing at 7:08. All right. All right, item number 7, board member acknowledgements and commendations. And this evening we'll start with Mr. Koo.
I wanted to first just commend all of our graduates in the Jefferson Elementary School District. Over the last week, I know a lot of them from kindergarten up to 8th grade either attended promotion or graduation ceremonies. And I know some of them were in person, some of them were also virtual, but just want to extend my congratulations to all of them on all their achievements this year, for sure. Also, I want to just acknowledge, I know Pat, we haven't had a meeting for the past couple of weeks, but I know there's been a lot of stuff in the news regarding creating more inclusive, more welcoming society and culture. And I just think that when it comes down to sort of giving free speech and a free press, I think progress takes time, but I know that in many ways we're making slow and incremental progress. And hopefully that one day that a lot of the protests and acts of free speech hopefully was for good. So just wanted to make a comment regarding a lot of the stuff that's going on the past couple weeks.
Thanks. Ms. Brizuela.
Okay. I just wanted to have some congratulations. George Washington did their staff parade today, which was really great for the students and the families. Then Garden Village PTA and staff held a drive-through using the Broadmoor Community Center. And it was really so well organized that it went perfectly. So at 2 different times, the parents, I guess it came with the first name from A to something, they drove through. And as they drove through, they were given by the principal their little promotion certificate, and then Broadmoor property owners gave them a little recognition as well. And they got gifts from the parents, and PTA gave them great big balloons and stuff. And they had a really good time. And it was absolutely safe and wonderfully done. Just drive through, stop and get their things, and off they went. So I wanted to thank anyone who participated in that, the teachers, and I was there watching it all too. I had the keys to get into the center in case they needed it, but we didn't really have to go in. And so that was really good. And then also, let's see what I think I already said that. And then I got a nice newsletter from the Cougar News, Daniel Webster. So they're doing some fine things as well. And other than that, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Well, I do want to say one thing is I want to wish everybody who is a father, grandfather, whatever, happy Father's Day, which is coming up. And also to tell everybody to keep safe, be happy. And before you know, we'll be back at our schools and doing some good stuff. And I want to thank everyone who's working hard to keep everything really smooth and letting the children know, the students know that they're very well thought of. They're congratulated. They're going to move on to the next level. And they are very special to all of us. So I just wanted to say that. Okay. That's it.
Thank Ms. Brizuela for those wonderful words and always keeping things in perspective.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Trustee Manuel.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I also want to commend our recent graduates from JESD. I wish you all the best of luck and success on your journey after you leave our district, and hope that you come and visit us sometime, because we do care about you and we're so glad that you graduated in these unprecedented times. And I do also want to commend our staff, administration, and our families and the community at large with everything that we are dealing with, from COVID to all of the racial tension and protests going on. I think that it's been very wise for our community to keep this path of, education, of social justice and inequalities that we're facing. So, I not to be a politician with lip service or anything, but I do commend our families and our parents, especially, who have taken the helm when we didn't have the, teacher-student setting anymore, to go ahead and address those issues with our students for us, because we couldn't or didn't have the stage to do it. So I really commend those parents that are able to do that. And great to see everybody tonight.
All right, thanks very much. And I too am commending this evening our district, our staff, our administrators, and our teachers, students, and community. Daly City is a very diverse city, and within that diversity, there are still some separations and some things that we can improve. But however, like I always say, we're usually cutting edge and we're ahead of the game. And I can honestly say that I'm proud of all the board members that we have. I've never had any type of doubt that we're not all on the same page when it comes to issues of equity and racism. So I'd just like to commend all of us, first of all, and then second of all, commend City Council. They're actually in a meeting right now, a special session discussing issues of racism and police accountability in our community. So I like to commend them right now, and they said it's their first forum. And I would like to request that we also put on our next agenda some type of space for us to talk about how, as a district, we prevent or we attempt our best to prevent the spread of racism in our schools.
Great job.
Thank you. And I would also like to acknowledge all of our graduates. You know, some of us did it virtually, some were there in person. So thanks for all the board members who actually were able to attend in person. I was able to do video messages to all the students, and I got positive feedback that people paid attention to the things that we said. And hopefully they act on the advice that we gave them. And I'd also like to acknowledge the high school graduates, including my son, Aman Ali, who just graduated from Jefferson.
All right.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So as you know, most of you know, he also is a graduate of Policita School. So that was fun to drive through the parking lot and get out and take a picture. He got to take a picture with the principal, Mr. Bashirs, and we had a really good time. So, you know, we do the best that we can here in Daly City to take care of our students and make them feel, as you said, Ms. Griswella, that they're special and that they are appreciated.
Yeah.
And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Vidales.
Yeah, I just want to say that was really happy to participate in the end of year activities in a new way this year. You know, even though most of them were virtual, the hearing of the pomp and circumstance theme, you know, still brings a tear to my eye. And it was so cool to see the pictures of our students, you know, flash up on the screen. I was able to see the Franklin Roosevelt, the drive-in graduation. That was neat to watch as well. And then, of course, as Mrs. Brizola mentioned, running into the various car parades that wound through our city on the last few days of school was fun as well. I do want to ask if the board would not mind, would you mind moving public comments 7C to the end after 15? We've just realized that on our comment form, we've left off the space where speakers can write their comment. And if the speakers who've submitted a comment card would like to send their comment to Maria Kovarai, and I'll speak out her email address right now so they can send it, and we'll read it. We'll move that section to the end. The email address is start over. mco, spelled C-O, Viray, V-I-R-A-Y. Let me repeat that. mco, C-O, Viray, V-I-R-A-Y, at Jefferson, ESD.org. So if you send your written comment to Ms. Kovarai, she will make sure that it gets to Ms. Manya, who will be doing the reading of the comments. And that's the way that we've set it up. We'll investigate other ways to do it, and we'll certainly fix our form so the comment can be included. So if the board doesn't mind, that would be great.
All right, will we need to make a formal motion for that, or?
No, I think we could just move it to the end. We'll just take it up at the end.
All right, sounds good to me. How about the rest of you?
Yeah.
All right. Item number 7C. So that's the one that we're going to move to 15.
Yeah, right after 15.
Okay, right after 15. All right, so general functions, item 8A. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we got a second. I think I heard Ms. Manuel first, and this requires a roll call.
Mr. Koo,
Yes.
Mrs. Brizuela,
Yes.
Ms. Manio,
Yes.
Mr. Ali.
Yes, unanimous. Item 8D, 2020 to 2021 CSEA Chapter number 233, Contract Renewal, Proposal, Sunshine, and Schedule of Public Hearing. A public hearing will be held on July 22nd, 2020 to receive public input on the CSEA Chapter number 233, Contract Renewal Proposal for the 2020-2021 school year. CSEA is proposing to open negotiations on Article 5, Wages, Article 6, Health and Welfare, and Article 11, Leave of Absence. The administration recommends setting a hearing date, acknowledging the receipt of and direct sunshining and distribution for public review, the contract proposal for 2020-2021 by CSEA Chapter number 233, as required by the ROTA Act. So this requires us to take action, either vote yay or nay to have this sunshining, which we're required to do.
Yeah, you're just setting the hearing date.
I'll make a motion that we hold a public hearing on July 22nd, 2020 to receive public input on the CSEA Chapter number 233 Contract Renewal Proposal for 2020-2021.
Second.
And we have a second. I believe Manio, Trustee Manio got it in first again. And all those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, I think that's all four unanimous. Thank you. Item number 8F, COVID-19 Education Partnership Fund Grant Agreement / Award. The administration recommends acceptance of the COVID-19 Education Partnership Fund Grant Agreement for the grant award of $60,000 to assist the district in addressing the extraordinary educational and well-being needs of students created by the COVID-19 crisis. Mr. Vidales, did you want to speak on this?
Yeah, so this is a grant that I believe I announced we received at our last meeting, if not the one before. It's $60,000. It's put together by the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, corporate foundations, and individual donors to the fund. It's going to allow us to purchase some extra Chromebooks that we need for the technology, as well as the hotspots that many of our families require to have internet connectivity. We will also be able to work with community partners to support our families with some tangible needs during this time, as many have lost jobs and are experiencing other hardships. We expect to be able to provide our summer counseling to some of our highest need students with the use of these funds, and also pay off portions of our accrued student lunch debt that accrued over the last year for families. So we're excited about this possibility and very happy that we've been able to be supported in this way by the Silicon Valley Community Foundation.
Okay. Any quick questions? Okay, I did have a question. How were we notified of the opportunity for this grant, and who did the work to make sure we got it?
Okay, we were notified soon after we went into the shelter in place on March 13th, March 16th. Within a week or two, I received notice from the County Office of Education Superintendent, Nancy McGee, that this fund was being formed. It took a while to form it. We submitted our request, I believe, I forget when it was due. Maybe it was May 1st. Submitted it on May 1st, and it was a joint writing project. I led it, Ms. Kessler contributed to it, Ms. Baroni contributed to it, Ms. Martinez contributed to it, and we submitted it on the 1st.
Oh, okay, thank you. So yeah, thanks for all those people who collaborated to get that done. And, you know, you've already told us, you know, where it's going to go towards the counseling and relieving of the debt so that students can eat in the summer and not feel guilty about it. So, you know, I really appreciate that. Thanks. So do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to accept the COVID-19 Education Partnership Fund Grant Agreement for the grant award amount of $60,000 to assist the district in addressing the extraordinary educational and well-being needs of students created by the COVID-19 crisis.
I'll second the motion.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Ms.
Great
Fidel,
work.
President Ali, I have a question. Did we skip item 8E? Or did I just?
No, I believe we did it at 7:07.
No, Ms. Varai, do you know if we skipped it? I think we did. She says that she thinks we did. We skipped it, so we should do 7E. Thank you, Mr. Koo.
So items 8E, is that what you're saying?
Oh, sorry, yeah, 8E, yes.
Okay, yeah, we already did 2. Okay, well, if we did, let's do it then. So, wait, do we skip D and E or just E?
No, we did D. We just need to set the hearing for the district's response.
Okay. So do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to schedule a public hearing on July 22nd, 2020 to review public input on the district's response to CSEA Chapter 233.
Second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, unanimously approved. All right, thanks, Mr. Koo. And so now we are at item 8G, summary of process from Jefferson Elementary School District, return to schoolwork group. Superintendent Bernardo Vidales will share the process, constraints, initial learning, initial learning, and next steps of the return to schoolwork group as the district plans for returning to on-site school operations in fall 2020.
Great, thank you, Mr. Ali. I'm going to share my screen here. And so as you mentioned, this is a first summary of the work group that has been started work on this very complex issue of how to return to school. It was comprised of a diverse group of individuals, members of departments that are relevant to school operations, as well as representatives from both of our employee associations. And the purpose of this team for this initial phase was to become familiar with the state and the county guidance, the constraints and protocols to recommend a district model and structures for safely returning to on-site learning. And that was our purpose as we met together. We met about 5 times since the beginning of early May, maybe 4 times. So I'm just going to go through real briefly just what we've perused, what we've done, and where our recommendations are leaning right now. So this plan is based on Governor Newsom's Reopening Society document that he produced at the beginning of May. He had 6 criteria that he looked for to reopen California society. 3 of them apply to schools, and they're listed there on the screen. Soon after, there was countywide approach released in San Mateo County. And these conditions here were ones that applied to schools. The second one is one that I want to talk about because it was hard to understand initially, and over the last few weeks, I've grown to understand it. That criteria is that the number or the trend of the newly confirmed daily COVID-19 cases, including hospitalizations, deaths, positivity rates, and I'll get into what those are in a minute, in the county has remained constant or declined for 14 or more days. So that's a criteria that the county's put into place to suggest, when are we going to start moving things to become open? And as you've heard or noticed, the county has moved in that direction, precisely because these conditions are being met. So here's a chart of current conditions, and this is as of Monday. I included San Francisco in here, partly because we are closer to all of San Francisco than we are to most of San Mateo County. I think if we went 7 miles south, we'd probably end up somewhere in Millbrae, maybe Burlingame. So I think it's important that for our district that we monitor activity in San Francisco. However, we are in the jurisdiction of San Mateo. So this chart here explains the total number of cases in both of those counties. However, the new daily cases, that's how many new cases are identified each day, are in decline. The second row here, and again, this is as of Monday, shows the deaths that have occurred as a result of COVID-19. Again, the daily events are in decline, so not happening as often as they were happening before. In fact, San Mateo, the number of deaths at 99 have been there for at least a week. I haven't had any in a week. I think doctors are getting better at treating it, the conditions, and know better how to interrupt the decline, I hope. And San Francisco, I believe they recorded 1 death yesterday, so that would be 47. Again, similarly with hospitalizations, this is all of the folks who are in the hospital for one reason or another, whether they're in ICU or they're just on the regular floor as a result of COVID-19. As of Monday, there were 27 in San Mateo and 38 in San Francisco, but both counties had a much larger, possibly 20 to 30 more last week. So again, the total trend is in decline, at least for this week, and certainly from the very beginning as well. If you go to either Department of Health's website, you can see these graphs on your own. Now the positivity rate, that's the percent of individuals who have tested positive over all of the tests that have been given. So that's the top number. So in San Mateo, 5.3% of those who have been administered the test have tested positive. And in San Francisco, it's 4%. The daily rate, that's every day, what percent of individuals who've taken the test positive have hovered in San Mateo between 2 and 6%, and in San Francisco between 1 and 2%. Those are very good numbers. The public health officers start getting concerned when that number starts to get close to 8, and certainly when it's over 8. The numbers are not going to, the total numbers are likely not going to change with the positivity rate, just because at the very beginning of inception, tests were only given to individuals who exhibited symptoms, and the positivity rate at that point was very high. And there were lots of tests given to those individuals. So over time, even though we are testing more, the negative results don't have time to impact that very large first couple of weeks of positive results. So looking at the daily rate certainly has decreased since the inception, and it has decreased in the last 3 to 4 weeks when we started testing more openly. So all of these indicators seem to indicate that San Mateo is on the right path to start reopening society, reopening different aspects of the economy and other cultural events, which is good. And we hope that as it reopens, that we stay in the safe zone. Additionally, end of May, beginning of June, the county came out with the pandemic recovery framework for schools. It's regularly updated and evolving. It's not a static document. So if you've read it once, you might want to read it again in a week, because there's new parts added and other parts are updated based on new guidance. The California Department of Education also submitted their reopening schools document called Stronger Together. And of course, there are the local health orders and conditions. And so the committee dove into these documents and orders just to try to understand what the different constraints are as we consider opening up schools again. I'll focus mostly on the San Mateo County Pandemic Recovery Framework, because that one is the most encompassing and also the one that's most detailed and based and involves the San Mateo County health orders. It's visually, it is represented by 4 pillars. The first pillar is health and hygiene. Second one is face coverings. The third is physical distancing. And the fourth is limiting gatherings. So the health and hygiene pillar is one that we're all familiar with, at least with the visual there. The washing of our hands for 20 seconds or more, several times a day. That is a pillar that we need to incorporate and integrate into our school practices much more than before. We need to teach about it. We need to practice it. We need to send homework home about it. We need to really begin to make that part of our culture, because that's one of the most effective ways to reduce the transmission of this virus. Another aspect of health and hygiene is the regular temperature screenings or daily temperature screenings of all individuals in a school. So everyone coming to a school, students, staff, visitors, not for a while, but whenever they do start coming back, temperatures will be taken. And that's just to make sure that nobody is infectious. We understand that not everybody who's positive and carries the virus is going to have a temperature, but once they have a temperature, the viral load is much stronger and they're much more able to spread it. And the last piece of health and hygiene, and that's one that we practice every day in schools, but we need to do job and adapt how we do it is the cleaning of school environments and school spaces, making sure that they're not only clean, but that they are regularly disinfected or sanitized to prevent the spread of this virus. Face covering, let me hold off on that one. Let me move to physical distancing. We've all heard the message the last couple of months very strongly, very clearly. Stay 6 feet away from somebody else who is not in your household. And this is especially necessary if it's for a prolonged period of time. Short times, passing somebody on the sidewalk or in a hallway, we can't avoid those. We do it, and there's very little risk being found in those kinds of activities. But if somebody is closer than 6 feet for a long period of time, like more than a couple of minutes, the risk of transmission increases. And so we need to design our spaces so that we include physical distancing as part of that design. And then face coverings is what I want to get to next. Wearing a face covering also helps with the transmission. And so the more people we can have on campus wearing face coverings, the safer it'll be for the whole campus. And the framework does include language around having students practice wearing face coverings as young as kindergarten, and certainly as they get older to 8th grade. However, the health department just issued an order today that said children under 12 he does not require them to wear facial coverings. However, he anticipates it is a helpful practice. And so how that gets incorporated into the framework is yet to be seen. We will keep our eyes on that. And the last one, also influenced by today's health order, is limiting of gatherings. It used to be 10 people, and it was 10 people for the longest time. But just today, effective today, the gatherings can be increased to 50. 50 individuals that are not in the same household can be together. So that helps schools a little bit. You can now have possibly a PTA meeting as long as there's less than 50 people there. And aside from the very first one of the year, usually there are less than 50 people. So that helps, but still in those gatherings, you should maintain your physical distancing of 6 feet from anyone not in your household. So that limits how many you can have in a space like a multi-use room. So just a visual here. Yes, sir.
Oh, can you go back 1 second to the previous slide?
Oh, let me try to figure that out. Okay, here it is.
Well, actually, okay. So the face coverings,
yes.
I believe I read something about, so not only the age, but also students with IEPs or that may have some type of disability.
Yes, there are exceptions certainly for any individual who has breathing difficulties or sensory issues. But the best practice is if you don't have any of those issues or concerns, to wear the face coverings. And it's an odd concept for Americans because we're doing it not to protect ourselves, which if that was the case, we would be very motivated to do it. We're wearing our facial coverings to protect others around us. And if more of us wear it, more of us are protected. Because chances are then the person who is positive is wearing a facial covering and keeping those droplets within the facial covering and not out in the air where somebody else can breathe it in. So it is, and it doesn't have to be a mask. I know the student there is shown wearing a mask. It can be a bandana, it can be a scarf, it can be a gaiter, which is one of those neck coverings that you can bring up over your nose and mouth. It can be a t-shirt that you just bring down, or you make something out of a t-shirt. Anything that will help keep droplets close to, trap the droplets to prevent them from entering the airspace anything like that is super helpful.
Thanks.
Yep. So then we looked at, oops, sorry, I went the wrong direction. All right, so here's just some visuals of what a 6-foot physical distancing classroom might look like. This is a middle school setting. 14 to 16 students can fit there. An upper elementary, 16 students. You don't see the last row here in the front, can fit there. Lower elementary classroom, 12 to 14 easily can fit there. Our class sizes tend to be 24 to 26. And in the early elementary classrooms, our students have all of their personal belongings. And so they'll be able to store that underneath their desks. And on the days that they're there, they can pull them out. So what this does, what this shows us, is that only about half of our students will be able to be in our school on any given day, because we just don't have the space to have everybody be 6 feet apart. And that is the hardest thing to swallow with all of this, because students will be limited to being on campus about half the time. So there are some instructional models that are out there that we've considered, that this particular group considered, but ruled out. And I say for now, because later they may become more palatable or even more interesting. The first one is what's called an A-B week blended learning model, which means half of the students come to school 1 week, the other half stay home that week, and then the next week, the other half of students come to school. And then the first half students stay at home and engage in distance learning activities. The committee felt at this point that that model gave too much time away from the classroom. It was too much like at-home learning, and felt like we wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to be in person and be in person more often together, for students not to have too much time of separation from school. The second one is, and if you remember the old days when we had kindergartens that were half days, we had a kindergarten in the morning and then we had a kindergarten in the afternoon. So it's a similar model as that. It's called an AM/PM staggered day. Every kid gets to come to school every day, but only for half of the time, half of the day. We liked that model. We thought it could work, but cleaning classrooms between groups became an obstacle that we're trying to figure out how to do that. If it takes half an hour to clean a classroom, we don't have 20 custodians who can do that, 20 classrooms in half an hour. So we need to figure out what the standard for cleaning in between groups is. It's probably not as detailed or as thorough as the once-a-day cleaning that has to happen, but nonetheless, there is some work that has to get done between the groups. We're looking into that. And then serving lunch, because again, conceivably you'd have 100% of your students on campus during the lunch period. Right now we have flexibility to do grab and go lunches where students can just grab their lunch and go home. If that were to continue, this model becomes even more interesting, because the morning group can grab their lunch and go home. An hour later or so, the afternoon group can show up, get their lunch and go eat it in their classroom or outside if the weather is nice enough. And then they can join into the classroom. So that one's still sort of on the back burner, but it is definitely right now not a possibility with our understanding. Where we are leaning right now and we're favoring, and again, I say for now, because if we get more information, that can shift, is called the AB Days Blended Learning Model. That's where half of the students are on site for 2 days and half of the students are at home for 3 days, and then we switch. Now you say 2 and 2, that's only 4 days. So there's a 5th day plan. The 5th day would be set aside for student extra support, for staff planning, staff collaboration, staff meeting opportunities, and any needed professional development on that 5th day. So currently the group is considering and playing with the Monday, Thursday. A group is on site. The Tuesday, Friday, the B group is on site. Partially because we wanted, again, to minimize the number of days students were away from school. But we need to hear from a wider group to make that final determination. And Wednesday would be the 5th day. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday are possibilities as well. This would include a staggered start time, staggered end times, and staggered lunch times for different groupings. Students in the same household across the district, and we have an ability to designate who those are or figure out who those are, will have similar schedules. So you won't have a brother in kindergarten and an older sister in 6th grade having opposite schedules. We would make sure that anyone who's who lives in the same address will have the same schedule. So because of the current understanding of the cleaning practices needed between groups, this is the part that is the least exciting and the hardest to swallow, because we have to clean our classrooms in between groups right now, or we have limited understanding of what that means. The staff may need to be the ones who rotate to serve our students in the middle schools, or we have to develop some other solution. And I think we can figure something out on both of those counts. You know, you don't, that would be a burden for many teachers who like to teach with realia or have math manipulatives and materials to carry from one space to the next, and would really limit what they can do because it would be limited to what they can carry. So we're looking more into that. And then because of the class sizes and the services required and the transportation involved, students in a special day class, that's some of our more moderate to severely impaired students, they may be able to attend all 5 days because those classes tend to be 12 or smaller. So they may be able to fit in their classrooms for those days and not have to switch back and forth, which would, they're also the students that require the most support. And we're supposed to approach this, you know, with an equity mindset. That's why we have the Wednesday for extra support. And then for this particular group of students, you know, making sure that they get their full 5 days if it's at all possible. So there's some information that we still need to seek. And as we seek answers to these, we will, it may impact our model selection. I've spoken about getting clarity on the surface cleaning requirements. We need to determine and figure out, do we have any flexibility on the length of the instructional day? Like, can we go every day to 1:30, giving staff an hour to an hour and a half at the end of the day to check in on the kids who are at home all day? Or do we have any flexibility at all in the week? Because our 5th day experiment hinges on having that flexibility. So we're going to get some clarity on that to move forward. Again, I mentioned about the flexibility about meal distribution, because we'll have our on-site students eating meals on-site, but we also have half of our students at home. And so in some way, we need to be able to continue our meal distribution for families who are at home. And we'll seek answers to that question. The other thing that we need to investigate is what's called a soft start, where we don't start everybody on the first day of school for the full day as planned, where we might start, you know, 5 students in a class for one day, and then a different 5 students the second day, and then, you know, just get 5 students in at a time, because that allows a teacher to be able to teach new routines. These are routines that none of our students have ever experienced. And we want to make sure that everybody understands them to keep everyone safe. The other way for a soft start is to stagger our grade level start dates, to say kindergarten comes in on these days and stays coming in, then we'll add fifth graders, then we'll add first grade, we'll stagger them in those different ways. If it seems to serve the overall purpose of making sure that students learn the new practices so that they can stay safe. Of course, there's health data and guidance and direction from the county health and the county office of education that we pay attention to. And then another one is, what is our ability to serve students with special needs who are not in special day class, students who need speech therapy, students who need academic services. There's a variety of special needs that we provide. And some of these models may benefit providing those services easier than other models. And we'll look into those as well. And of course, there's many more things that we need to investigate and look at. So before I move on to the family survey, is there any questions that you have perhaps about the plan that we are leaning toward, or clarifying anything in the pandemic framework?
Mr. Vidales, thank you for the presentation. I had a question. When it comes down to the set of slides that you showed on like all the potential district-wide favored options, what is the timing in terms of sort of deciding when that would take place? Would that depend on like the health situation? Would it depend on like different orders from the state and the county?
Yeah, so deciding whether or not we open school, that's a county decision. That's a county health decision. And that I would hope that we would know within 3 weeks of the start of school. We'll start to get hints of that throughout the month of July. If we start to see some of this health data move in the other direction, we'll start to get a hint that we may not be able to start, but the ultimate decision for closing schools is a health department decision. And if the health department doesn't take that decision, then I would bring it to you to discuss. Because we do want to take into account the health and safety of students and our staff and our community, because our students will move around in our community as well. And the actual model, so I'll discuss at the end the process that we're going to enter into next to decide on any shifts to the initial recommendations.
Thank you.
Yep. So I think I mentioned that, or did you have a question, Mr. Ali?
Well, just to clarify, because that was a great question by Trustee Koo. So individual districts have more authority on opening as opposed to closing. Is that fair to say? Yes, nobody can force you to open, I suppose, but we can be forced to close. Yeah, that's what I was trying to tease out. Although I do hear some discussion going on at the state level that they want to force districts to open, and there will be loss of funding if you don't provide an in-school option. So, and consider if all the health indicators suggest that you should be opening, then they want to tie some funding to that decision. So in some ways we may be forced to open because our funding could be drastically reduced if we don't. So, and we're in a county where the health conditions are moving in the right direction. All right, so many of you knew, and I think I've shared, that we did a family survey from the beginning to the middle of May. And it's taken a while to get the results translated and back to us. We distributed it in 4 different languages, at least, and got them all translated back into English, and then we compiled them into one format so that we can analyze it. Questions that we asked were demographics-oriented questions, some questions around your opinions and sentiments on different topics.
Some readiness questions, in particular, how ready is your child to independently wash their hands? How ready is your child to wear and keep a facial covering on? Because that informs what we need to do in the first few days of school. How much do we need to teach around this? And then the most interesting question, and you'll see why it's interesting, are preferences. Do you prefer an in-school physically distanced approach to an education, or would you prefer 100% at-home approach? And we'll get into the results in a minute here. So the results, 47% of our families at the beginning of May said that they would prefer 100% at-home learning for next year. That's much larger than I expected. And it's probably much larger than we've seen, that I've heard of in many different neighboring districts. But that's what we got. So that tells us we need to provide and investigate a stronger, more robust distance learning program for our students. Because we don't want to lose those students, and we want them to come back when everything is settled. Yes, Mrs. Brizuela.
Well, I want to know, did every child or every family receive the paperwork?
Yeah, it's yes, every family received a survey. We had 1,500 responded. So again, this is a survey. It's not, later we're actually gonna send out a declaration where we want everybody to declare, I want this or I want that.
Okay.
This one is just a survey to give the district an idea of where the sentiment is moving on certain questions. And I think we got enough responses to be able to give us that. If both mothers and fathers, or the two parents, sent in a response, and many of them did, and just one of them did, we should have had about 6,500 responses, because that's how many went out. But we had about a quarter of that, so 25% returned, which is for a survey, that's at this time, that's a pretty good number. Usually we try to get over 15 to 20%, because that's when you start to see the answers don't really change much after that. So because the first 5% who send it back are the ones who feel the strongest about one issue or another. Right. And then after that, the general population starts to express their sentiments. So 25% is a pretty strong one for a survey. So 47% of those who responded prefer at-home learning, which suggests that there's going to be a large percentage of families who will later declare that's what they want. 11% of our families believe that their child is unprepared for independently wearing a face covering. Now that number is a lot smaller than I expected, because this survey went out right about the same time that the facial coverings were being recommended for the first time, right at the beginning of May. It had not been recommended until then. So I didn't think that our students would know much about facial coverings at that time of the year. But 11% of the families believe their child is prepared, or is unprepared for wearing a facial covering. I was expecting closer to 25 to 50. 3% of families believe they can independently wash their hands, and that's a good number. And that just suggests that we've been messaging since end of February, beginning of March to wash hands, and that's a common message that families have been messaging to their children since they could walk up to the sink to wash their hands. And so the 3% who cannot, I'm going to imagine that they tend to be our youngest students, or also some of our students with special needs who don't have that awareness yet. And that's a common experience. So the other question is, what is your greatest concern with regard to reopening school? And everybody included at least one. Some of them included more than one. But 45% of those who responded their greatest concern is concern for their child or their family's health and their safety. And that number corresponds very closely to the 47% of families who prefer an at-home learning for next year. If that's your greatest concern, some of them shared, they have individuals with compromised immune systems, either the child or family member, and they really are concerned about that. 26%, about a quarter of families expressed low confidence in the school's ability to consistently monitor or support some of these safe practices like the distancing or the washing of hands or the facial coverings. They're not sure that the school will be able to uphold these 4 pillars. And so that signifies to me that when we get information out, that we need to provide information about how these pillars will be enforced and will be supported. 15%, just their biggest concern is that there's no vaccine yet and there was no viable treatment. So the treatment is getting better, but the vaccine is, it's still months, if not a year away. 11%, their largest concern was not about their family and their child, but about other people's children and other people's practices. They're not sure that other people have safe lifestyles and don't know where they send their kids after school. So that was their greatest concern. I mean, it's related to the personal family health and safety, but they particularly called out other people's behaviors as being their concern. And then 3% of the families, their largest concern was academic recovery, learning loss support. How is my child going to get back the learning that they lost in the last 10 weeks being at home learning? Because everybody realized that the learning was not as strong during those 10 weeks as it was for the 10 weeks before that. And that is one reason why for the distance learning, we want to look into a program that is stronger than one that we, like I said before, we pulled it off. We did something. It was much better than nothing, which a lot of districts did. But it wasn't designed to be an at-home learning. We just took what happened in the classroom and we transferred it to a distance learning environment. And there are better ways to do that. So the last one, let me just even look at the visual there. There is a question that says, what are 3 questions that you would like the district to know that you have? So 3 questions with 1,500 respondents. That was between 3,000, and not everyone responded. So there were about 3,000 questions. And I did not personally have the bandwidth to go through all of them. I did read them all. And they did cluster in the same areas as the greatest concern. So that made sense to me. But I didn't have the ability to sort them and tally them. So what I did instead is I put all of those comments into this program to create a picture of what is the most commonly used word in these comments. And, we would expect this from parents, but kids was their most commonly referenced word. Of course, they have the social in there, which I think referred to the social, either social gatherings or social distancing. There were, you can see there the make and the sure about the same size. So folks probably use them in the same sentence and together. How will we make sure that the masks stay on? How will we make sure that students stay separated? Concerns around cleaning, concerns around when a lot of concerns were about, we want our school to open, we want our kids to learn. So some of them thought that school was going to open the next week because I was sending out the survey. But that was just a miscommunication. So it is very interesting, and we will go back and look at those questions, and it will help inform our information that we give out to families later in July. So we have lots of next steps. I'm just going to let you peruse them, and I'll highlight a couple of them. Again, I mentioned about the at-home learning curriculum. We're going to need to investigate and select something that's stronger than trying to translate a curriculum. Getting answers to the questions that we have. We have lots of site-based teams that are working at their school sites to help figure out how this works for them. We're going to seek some feedback on this plan from a wider group of staff and our families through a survey, and also through developing an elementary school and middle school representatives on district committees. Phase 2. So this committee will have a second phase, and that will be representatives from every school coming together to discuss these issues, and where there's areas of agreement to agree to move forward in implementing that. And then we would adjust this plan if necessary. This one is a no-brainer. Ensure that we have materials and the technology to implement the plan. I mentioned this one already. I mentioned this one where we ask our students to declare, our families to declare if they want distance learning for the year, and then that'll help us know how to staff that effort appropriately. This was mentioned again, the linking households. Soft start isn't something we need to investigate. And of course, providing professional development for this implementation of this model, the practices and curriculum. This is not anything we've ever done before. We've never taught in an environment where you're 6 feet apart. Lots of practices have to shift. You can't do partner talks, you can't do small groups. But there are still things that we can do. And so we need to learn what are the things that we can do and how do we maximize those. So I know that was a lot of information, but I did want to share with the board where we were in this process. Like I said, we started in May. We're in June. We've been at this for about 5 weeks. We've gotten pretty far. And we still have a long ways to go. And I was speaking to somebody today who children in another district. They haven't heard anything from their district at all. And I have friends who teach in that district, and they haven't heard anything at all either. So we're a little bit ahead of other districts, but we're not as far ahead as we would like. Any questions? And I believe, Ms. Manya, did you get a question emailed to you, a comment emailed to you on this topic? Let's see.
She might be frozen.
I
Oh, there she
didn't.
is.
Sorry, I was on mute.
You didn't.
I did receive
Okay.
comment from Paul Hagan.
Okay, if you don't mind reading that out, please, that'd be great.
So this was just the summary of the comment, which is a desire for broader participation on the district reopening committee. But I didn't receive
Okay, I have
an
it.
email from that.
Okay, she said she did send it to you.
She did. I got.
Oh, no, I've got it here. I've got it. I can read it.
Okay.
All right. So here we go. Reopening concerns. We are a group of JESD teachers concerned about the lack of representation in the district reopening committee. We know that a committee has met to discuss plans for the 2020-21 school year. We are disappointed with the lack of transparency and representation in this group. The committee included many members of district leadership, but only one teacher, Paul Hagan, who is also representing the certificated union, 2 classified representatives, Wes Cole representing the classified unit, Anita King representing school food services. If this committee reconvenes, we ask that all stakeholders be included in important decisions. The groups who must be represented are parents, guardians, students, teachers from different grade levels and subject areas, and other school staff, especially custodial staff. This committee must reflect the diverse experiences of our entire community, not just district leadership. Making decisions without proper input runs the risk of overlooking important details, alienating stakeholders, and creating a culture of distrust. We want the reopening to work for everyone, and excluding the people who work most closely with students is unacceptable. We want to work with the district to find solutions that work for everyone and to help foster a sense of collaboration and respect. We ask that all stakeholders be invited and encouraged to contribute to decisions that affect our entire community.
Is that the only one?
That's the only comment on this one.
Yeah. So in reference to that comment, do you foresee a way to have more representation without me making a judgment about if there was enough or not? But do you foresee? Okay.
Yes, there is, and I explained it a little bit where we're going to be forming the elementary and the middle school sort of study groups committees, representatives from every school site. Every school site has a reopening committee, and we're going to select representatives. We're not going to select. They will select representatives from their site committees to come and participate in a larger district conversation, as well as we will be sending out a survey to gauge general community response and concerns about what is being proposed.
Okay.
And just to re-ask what Trustee Koo asked, is there a time frame for these decisions? Is there a deadline that we need to meet, or?
So our hope is that we'd have a decision by the July 22nd meeting that we could present to the board and have the board be informed of that and ideally approve it at that point. And we'd need to start communicating to families soon after that, because school starts on August 19th. And so we need to start knowing, and we may ask it beforehand too, especially around the distance learning question. How many of our families are going to select that option? Because we want to make sure that they get placed in the class and we have staff for them. So July 22nd, I would say. I think that's the day that we meet again.
I have so many questions. I have so many suggestions as well. I've been on the I've been on a lot of the county school board Zoom calls. I've been on the county elected Zoom calls as well, and we have our work cut out for us. This is not an easy feat. We definitely do. And you know, I appreciate Mr. Hagan's comments and believe that yes, a majority of the stakeholders should definitely be represented. Is the invite open to families at all, or is it only staff, or and when are these committees meeting?
Yes, so every school site has a reopening committee, and we're encouraging them to make sure that there's representation broadly from their school site committee. So parents, middle schools may want to have students involved, and they will discuss these issues and send a representative or two, probably two, to a district meeting. And those would be taking place over the next 3 or 4 weeks.
And that's in addition to the surveys that are sent out to everyone.
A survey will be sent out to everybody as well.
All right. Sounds good. If there's no more questions, this was actually just an information item.
Yeah, and you know, this is like Ms. Manio, you know how complex this is. And going into this, I knew that there's no way that anyone is going to be happy with everything. And which is it's a tough thing, because this is a tough question, whether or not to reopen. And we have people who feel strongly that yes, we need to reopen, and we need to reopen for every kid every day. And we have individuals who believe we should stay closed because the virus is still around and there's still a risk of infection. And there has to be a balance in that. And if we read the statements from the health officer, he really does focus on the concept of balance. And, you know, all of us manage risks every day when we leave our homes and we get in our car, and we manage the risk that we're going to end up in a car crash. But we take precautions against that. We practice safe driving. We wear our seatbelts. Our cars have, you know, airbags. And those are the kinds of actions that we want to take when we consider reopening and coming back for one thing or another. If we put these strong practices in place, then we have a greater chance of reducing or eliminating the transmission.
All right, thanks, Mr. Vidal. So I would like to move on to item 9A, which is COVID-19 operations written report. The administration recommends governing board approval of the COVID-19 operations written report. This report is in lieu of the LCAP for now and describes the actions Jefferson Elementary School District has taken in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I believe, didn't we go over this in the last meeting?
It was an item on the agenda. We skipped it because it needed to be approved at the same meeting that the budget was approved.
That is correct. Okay.
So we've all read it twice.
Yes, likely you read it a second time this time.
Yeah.
All right. So if there's no questions, if we don't need any further information, is there a motion? No. All right. So does anyone have any questions? Okay, if there's no questions, I'll go ahead and make the motion that we approve the written report of the COVID-19 operations in lieu of the LCAP for now.
I'll second your motion.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, hopefully everyone's here.
I second it. Did you hear me?
Okay, I didn't
Yeah.
hear, but
Are you having a hard time hearing me?
No, it's not you. It's the technology. Sorry. All right. So there was a second. All those in favor, say aye and thumbs up.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Unanimous. Approved. Great job. We made things easy for Dr. Joyner tonight. So,
And Dr. Joyner, we can. She did have a presentation in case you had questions, but we will upload that and make sure that it's available for the public to view and observe and review.
all right, thanks very much. Item 10C, agreement with Sodexo for consulting management, service of food service operation for 2020-21. The administration recommends approval of the contract with Sodexo for consulting management services of the district's food service operation for 2020-21 school year. And this is just action. We've had plenty of discussion about this. Do you have a question, Ms. Brizuela?
Yeah. It's hard for me to keep these ear things on my ear.
Yeah, I know.
So now I can hear
Adjust it a
you.
little.
Yeah. Okay, so we jumped to
10C.
10C. What happened to 10A?
That was consent.
Oh, is that why? Oh, I missed it. I even circled it. Okay.
Yeah.
I had questions on that, but that's all right. I guess I missed that.
At the board comments at the end, you know, you might want to bring that up. Or
Yeah.
so, did you have any questions for the food service?
Okay, we're on 10, you said 10, right? 10A?
Yeah. 10C, agreement with Sodexo for consulting management for the
Okay.
food service.
No. I just had some questions on I had a lot of questions on the warrant things, but I think I can, do I meet what I call Mrs. Kessler and talk to her about it, or?
You can call me.
Okay, there's a lot of questions on that one. So
Okay.
one question you might be able to answer for me now. Do employees receive pay in lieu of getting medical or dental insurance?
Is this something I can address at this time? I want to make sure I can. I don't know.
It's a yes or no question. You can say yes or no.
Oh, okay. Yes, they do.
Okay, then I can call you at work
Absolutely.
and talk to you about it. Okay, all right, thank you. So anyway, I have several of these pages that I had questions, but I'll call you and get that information.
Okay.
All righty? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
At this moment, I believe I made the motion. No, wait, that was the last item. So does anyone want to make a motion to on the food service?
I'll make a motion to approve the contract with Sodexo for consulting management services of the district's food service operation for 2020-2021 school year.
And do we have a second? Okay, so do we have some more deliberation? Is that Mario? Is there?
Again, this is based on the direction that the board gave at the last meeting to move forward in developing a contract. It is for 1 year. If the board determines that we need to go out for another RFP, we can have that discussion and start that as soon as November again.
That was my problem at that time. To move it along, I'll second it, but I wasn't crazy about it, so I'll second the motion.
All right, so we have a second. All those in favor, say aye and raise your thumb. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we have 3 ayes and 1 nay, 1 opposed.
Did you oppose it?
No, Ms.
I did.
Manio.
Oh, okay.
Ms. Manio opposed. So it still passes with a 3-1 vote.
Yeah.
And item 10G.
And excuse me, but it is for only 1 year. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, good. We can move on.
So item 10G, fiscal year 2020 to 21 budget development presentation. The administration will present the fiscal year 2020-21 proposed budget and multi-year financial projection for the district.
Okay, Ms. Joyner, Dr. Joyner, could you put my presentation up, please? There we go. Thank you. Oops. Yeah. Okay. I guess it doesn't all fit. Well, good evening. I never thought we'd get here for this next year. I'm glad we are, but there are going to be updates. I can absolutely guarantee you that. The governor gave his proposal, his May revise, and that is what we have to develop the budget on. That's it. We will talk about the legislature later on, but this budget is developed on that and only on that.
So is that another half hour or more in the meeting?
I'm sorry? Oh.
Okay.
So in that we get COLA on our LCFF, but then we get a 10% discount reduction on LCFF. That ends up being a 7.92% reduction. It's like it's deficiting it. And then what's happened is that we get COLA in all the out years, but that deficited amount grows in accordance with the COLA, so that basically all out years are flat funded with the 2021 amount. So it's just flat, no increases, except there's increases for ADA or decreases for ADA. And then the other important thing is that he did decrease the district's contribution, employer's contribution to both STRS and PERS. That will be a savings for the district of $875,000 a year for 2 years in a row. And so that'll be for the 2021 year and the 21-22 year. And then it goes, that decrease goes away and it goes back up, but that is certainly helpful. And then also there is deferred revenues. So we will already have revenues that were due this month that will come next month in July. So it will come in the next fiscal year. It'll come on July 15th. And then in the 2021 year, April, May, and June payments, part of April, but probably all of May and all of June will come in the 21-22 year. So we've experienced that before, where we're receiving revenues for the current year in the following year. Next slide, please. Okay, the things that are in the May revise that are not included in this budget is the CARES Act funds that the governor intends on giving us, that he says he's going to give us. And for Jefferson, that's approximately $5.3 million. So there's $0 in the budget for this. Okay, and there's a couple of reasons for this. First off, both school services and the county office of ed have highly recommended not to include it in the budget. And there is a very good reason for it. And right now, the way the governor's got it written is that it is for new services. And these funds also have to be spent by December 30th of this year of 2020. So it would have to be spent on new services at this point. So for every dollar of this money that we would recognize, we would have to recognize an additional expenditure. So it doesn't affect our end balance, our end fund balance, because we can't supplant, we have to supplement. And so we're hoping that some of those restrictions will change and allow us to charge expenditures, be more fluid with them, so that our distance learning would be covered by this. So that is why it's not included in the budget. Additionally, the governor has promised 1.5% additional general fund revenues in all the out years up until he spends $13 billion. So that would start in year 21-22 and continue until the $13 billion was met. The thing is that we can't really budget that because he can't make the budget for all those out years. The only year he can budget now is for the 2021 year. So those funds are not included in the multi-year projection. And then the governor has trigger off language. Instead of trigger on, it's trigger off, so that if the federal government gives more emergency funding, then the governor will do a trigger off in accordance with whatever that funding is. And he will start with the deficiting of LCFF. So if the federal government gave a lot of money to the state that could reduce all of the discounted LCFF, then that's what would happen first before doing anything else with those funds for education. Next slide, please. So the budget assumptions we have used, in addition to the other things that I've just mentioned for this year, is we're using the ADA that was for this current year. We're not, and we're also using that same ADA for out years. We don't know, I mean, it looks like we've got declining enrollment, but at this time, we're not budgeting for declining enrollment. Additionally, you know, we've got the S&C grant unduplicated percentages, which we're maintaining that. And actually, I think that will probably go up. We are going to try to target the families right away as soon as July 1st comes around to get them to sign up for their students for free and reduced lunches, is we feel we have to wait till July 1st, because anything that's signed by a parent before July 1st would be for this year and not for next year. So we have to wait for July 1st and have it on the new form. We feel that because so many families have had financial impact from the coronavirus, from this shelter in place, that more families will qualify. And it doesn't matter if they qualify July 1st and then go back to work November 1st, it doesn't matter anymore. They qualify for the entire year. The only thing is that we do have to do a verification audit in which we have to randomly pull 3% of the qualifying families and ask them for backup information. And that we have no choice. That's a requirement. But if the families apply and qualify, they get put on and they can stay on the entire year, and our unduplicated percentage would be based on that, and our S&C grant funds can go up considerably as a result. So we want to go out and try to get as many families as possible, as soon as possible. Additionally, what's included here is step and column. It's included every year. These are our PERS and STIRS rates that we will be charging, are being charged for the foreseeable future. And then we are currently underway in negotiations for the 2021 year, but we are not at a point where we have negotiated any kind of increases or decreases in salary. And so until that happens, until an agreement is made, it is not included in the budget. And then the last thing is that included in this budget, and this is just for the multi-year projection. Okay, this is not an actual cut to school sites at this time, but in the multi-year projection starting year 21-22, we have eliminated the S&C grant funds that go to the school sites. The reason for doing this, and you'll be able to see later, is that is the only way we can, at this time, we can meet our reserve for economic uncertainty, the 3%. So again, this is just in the multi-year projection. It is not an actual cut to school sites at this time. If the governor's budget didn't change, if the state budget, when it is adopted, was exactly like the governor's budget is, then we'll have to have some very serious conversations about what we need to do in order to meet our multi-year projection 3% reserve for economic uncertainty. So, but I just want to let you know that in this, that is in there, and that saves us $1.8 million on an annual basis. Next slide, please. So this is what our LCFF funding looks like for next year. We have $51.5 million that will be coming in, and that is $6,222,217 less than we are getting this year. That is the reduction in accordance with the governor's proposal, the May revise. That is a $909 per student loss. Of that decrease, $987,000, so nearly $1 million, is due to the loss of declining enrollment protection. So if we didn't have the declining enrollment, we would have like $6.2 million, $5.2 million less income instead of the $6.2 million less of income. Next slide, please. So this is what our unrestricted multi-year projection looks like. And as you can see, I don't have a pointer, but near the top, you can see that there's a minus 7.92%. That is this ongoing negative amount. Now that amount is would actually grow the percentage would grow in accordance with the COLA. The next line down is an important line, because what you're seeing here is that $1,033,000 in 2021. In 21-22, there's $3.8 million. That's a use of reserves. In 22-23, $6,950,000. That's a use of reserves. And in the final year, there are no reserves left, and we would have to include cuts of $7.1 million in order to meet our reserve for economic uncertainty. Now, in passing the budget, we are only required to show 2 years in the multi-year projection. So what is going to the county, the 22-23 year does not go to the county. So if you look at that one red line, it says net increase or decrease. So this is what our fund balance would be going down with all of these additional contributions, and after that $7.1 million cut. So in that last year, with a $7.1 million cut, we would still be deficit spending $157,000. So I know this looks horrible, and it really is horrible, but I really don't think it's going to be as bad as this. So next slide, please. However, I do have to show it to you, and I do need to share this with you, because this is what the budget is built on, because it is built on the May revise. So what, those numbers that you saw, what would the real deficit spending look like if, number one, we didn't use reserves, because that is not ongoing income, that's a savings account. Number two, if we didn't cut or eliminate the S&C grant funds in the out years of $1.8 million per year. And number three, if we didn't have the $7.1 million of cuts in the 23-24 year. So right below, you see what the actual deficit spending would be. 5.8 million, 6.1 million, 8.8 million, 9.3 million. That's if the governor, if that's what was really passed and we really wanted to not deficit spend, this is how much we'd have to cut on each year. Now, if you cut $5.8 million in 2021, you don't cut an additional 6.1 million in 21-22. You cut the difference between those, and so on. Next slide, please. So this slide I wanted to show you, that's okay, you can, yeah, that's good. I wanted to show you the reserves that we have and the use of those reserves. So basically at this time, the reserve we have in Fund 20 is $8.7 million. That's the reserve that was for OPEB, other post-employment benefits. That's for the medical after retirement, basically. That was put aside quite some years ago. That could be, the board would have to vote to remove that and bring it back into the general fund if we needed to do that. We have, after the close of, actually after the close of next year, we'll have $1.7 million left in our technology reserve. That would have to be used. And in our textbook reserve, after the 2021 budget as well, we would have another $1.7 million left in there. All those together equal $12.2 million. And then, as you can see, this is the usage right underneath it, with using just enough to meet that minimum reserve for economic uncertainty. Those are the amounts that I said that were in that previous slide, or two previous slides. The $1.1 million use of reserve, the 3.8, the 6.7, or actually 7 million rounded, equals $11,783,000. So after those, the use of those funds next year and the following 2 years, we would have $392,000 $100,000 left in reserves. Next slide, please. So as I said, I do not believe that that will be the budget that we end up having to work with throughout the year. And the reason I say that is because on Monday, now first off, this is not a normal year. This is not a normal situation. And there is so much that is unknown at this time. As I said in the presentation, the last board meeting, there is so much that's unknown. The legislature has passed a budget on Monday, and it has gone to the governor for review. And I want to say that they were not in agreement. The legislature, they went ahead, and usually they try to pass a budget where they're in agreement with the governor. And so the governor usually, maybe he'll make a small adjustment, but where the governor will approve it. They are not in agreement. And so I'll tell you what the legislature has in the budget. First off, they're recognizing revenues from the federal government, additional emergency revenues from the federal government. So their idea, rather than having a trigger off like the governor has, where if the governor says if we receive monies from the additional emergency funds from the federal government, we will reduce the cuts. What the legislature is saying is we're going to include those revenues. And if we don't get those revenues, we're going to have trigger cuts. So there's this trigger on instead of trigger off. Now, the way they plan on doing that is mostly through deferrals, is that what their trigger cuts are. So they, and that's if the money isn't received from the federal government or told we're going to get it by September 1st. So I'll take deferrals. I'd be happy to take deferrals over actual cuts, greater deferrals. But that's their plan. They plan on fully funding COLA, LCFF, including the COLA. So that would be great. Don't know if that's going to happen, the full funding of it. They also plan on providing an additional $2.7 billion above Prop 98 funding. And they are talking about a hold harmless with the 2019-20 ADA. Now, I have spoken to School Services of California today about that with the most updated information possible. And that does not necessarily mean that declining enrollment is protected for another year. So instead of having declining enrollment for 1 year, getting it for 2 years, which would be really nice, because what they're saying is that the ADA is held harmless at 1920 levels. So does that mean that we get the same actual ADA as 1920? Or does that mean that if we have a 96.5% attendance rate, will that attendance rate be applied to the enrollment that we have, and that they guarantee that it won't be below that? So School Services says that information is not out yet. They are hoping by the end of the week that there is some type of an agreement between the legislature and the governor so that they can inform us. So, you know, that's up in the air. I don't know. And then the other, but that is coupled, by the way, that is coupled with distance learning if the schools should have to close again. So there would be, it sounds like there would be a requirement to do distance learning. And I say that because we do it, but not all districts do it. Some districts just threw in the towel and didn't do distance learning. So the other things is just basically maintain the categorical funding at this year's level, the 1920 level, and there's still increases for the special ed. So next slide, please. So where are the major differences? Well, according to Capital Advisors and School Services and other creditable, knowledgeable groups, the areas of disagreement between the governor and the legislature are: one, the inclusion of additional federal revenues with the trigger on instead of the trigger off. That's one of the major areas. Another major area is is whether the legislature's deferral idea would be great enough to compensate for the loss or not getting the federal revenues. And then the third area is the way the CARES funds, so those funds that I've not included in the budget, that 5.3 million, the legislature doesn't like the way that is being distributed. And what it doesn't like about it is that the way it's being distributed now, according to the governors may revise, is that districts that had 55% or more unduplicated percentage, which we have, would get the funding. And it's about $1,900 per student. That's what my $5.3 million, that's part of it, was based on. If you had a 54% unduplicated percent, you would get zero, not a dime. So they don't like the idea that you get nothing if you're at 54% and you get a lot of money if you're at 55%. So in other words, if you get concentration grant funds, you would get these funds. But if you don't, you wouldn't get anything. And so they're at odds with that. And I think that they will probably win on that because there are huge losers to that. So the governor has 12 days from the day he received it, which I'm assuming he received it on the day it passed, which would have been Monday, 12 days to either approve it the way it is, which I doubt, veto it completely and send it back to the legislature, which is possible, or he has a ability to line item reductions. And so I don't know, I really don't know what he's going to do. I would have a stake high wager on the fact that he won't approve it that way, but one of the other two is most likely to happen. So next slide, please. So next steps, regardless of what is happening in the state, we have to pass a budget before June 30th or by June 30th of this year for next year. We send it on to the County Office of Ed. The County Office of Ed will either approve it, conditionally approve it, or disapprove it. In order for us to even get it approved, that's one of the reasons why we needed to make those additional cuts for the out years for the S&C grant funds, because they would want to know exactly what we are planning on cutting. We would have to earmark that. So for the out years, it's in the multi-year projection. This is not built on the LCAP, as you know. The LCAP isn't happening this year, or not at this time. And the legislature, when the state budget is passed, will have 45 days to update our budget. So we'll do that, and I will present to you what those updates are and what it looks like. And also, don't forget still that even when the legislature passes that, or the governor passes it, taxes aren't due until July 15th for last year. And a lot of our income has to do with personal income tax for the state. So we won't even know what that income tax is going to look like, the revenues to the state, until after July 15th. In which case, it may change again in August, because if it's higher than expected, then great for us. If it's lower than expected, then it might go down. But I do think that the governor is trying to budget conservatively on his revenues. So, but then again, we really still don't know what that personal income tax is going to look like for the 2019 year. Next slide. That's it. Questions, please. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This has been a real tough one to work with.
All right. Well, thanks very much for For a change, I don't have any questions regarding the budget presentation. Does anyone else have a question?
Ms. Kessler, I have a question. In regards to, I know in the past when we have to deal with deficit spending and we have large amounts, the county requires us to sort of kind of make a plan on what to cut early on. Is it currently the plan that we're going to hold off on that until the legislature actually passes a budget as well as the governor signs it so that we can at least get some reassurance on what that actually will be? Or how does it work for this time around?
Well, provided that a budget does actually get passed on time, we would definitely wait for that. I mean, we don't even know what it looks like. We would look to see what that looks like. We would also look to see if there's going to be a reduction or an increase in August due to the knowledge of what the revenues are going to be. Also, if we find out if we're going to get more federal emergency funds. And also, what will our enrollment really look like? And this is a really hard year because there's all the component of distance learning and kids, combination of kids being in the classroom, not being in the classroom, and what is that going to look like? And we really want to serve our students well. Of course, we want them to have a good education, but we also want them to stay with us. So once enrollment is in, once the students start coming, we'll also know what we need to do with or without declining enrollment. Because that's something we have to address. If we continue to decline, as I said, over the years, this problem, I believe, from the COVID and the economy, my personal belief is that it'll take a couple years and we should be back on track within a reasonable period of time. I do not believe it's going to be a long recovery like the 2008 crash was. However, our problem is the declining enrollment, and that's something that we have to address. And we have to address expenditures that will match our ongoing revenues that would be for at least more regular times. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Anybody else have a question? All right. Well, thank you very much for that presentation. And I just want to mention that I know that Trustee Manio has some ideas about how we can address the decline in enrollment. So I'm looking forward to some of those ideas in coming board meeting. So at this time, we will move on to item 10H, which is the adoption of the budget for 2020 to 21. The administration recommends that the Board of Trustees adopt the fiscal year 2020 to 21 proposed budget for all active district funds. So do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt the proposed budget and multi-year financial projection for the district.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, so that is unanimous, approved. Item 11A, certificated retirements 2019 to 2020. The administration recommends approval of the retirement request from the following certificated employees and requests appropriate resolutions be prepared commending them for their years of service with the district. Lisa Eisenstein, speech pathologist, Ben Franklin, Fernando Rivera, effective 6/27/2020. Ms. Eisenstein has been employed by the district since September 4th, 1992. Edward J. Ormansky, social science teacher at Fernando Rivera, effective 7/13/2020. Mr. Omansky has been employed by the district since 9/20/1989. And Gay Spampinato, first grade teacher, MHT, Marjorie H. Tobias, effective 6/13/2020. And Miss Spampinato has been employed by the district since January 4th, 1976.
Mr. Ali, before we move on, I believe the retirement date for Mr. Mansky should be June 13th instead of July 13th. Mr. Valenti, can you clarify that?
Put it back to June 13th because that's when his official retirement begins, because that's his birthday. So that's the day he had put with STIRS.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so it's written here as July, but it should be June 13th.
No, the July date for his retirement
Okay.
is correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the retirement requests for the following certificated employees. The request appropriate resolutions be prepared, commending them for the years of service to the district. Lisa Eisenstein, Edward J. Ormansky, and Gay Spampinato.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimously approved, and thanks to all three of them for their service, especially Ms. Spampinato. I was only 6 years old when she started.
That was in first grade. And
Just a baby.
yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm not going to say anything about that.
all right. Making fairly good time this evening. We are at item number 12A. Sorry. Board policies, administrative regulations. March 2020 CSBA board policy revisions, first reading. The board will review and revise board policies, administrative regulations from March 2020 CSBA board policy revisions as stated in a first reading. And I must say that March 2020, that sounds like we're like way caught up as opposed to in the past. So is there any discussion on this? Or is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt the March 2020 CSBA board policy revisions, first reading.
Second motion.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimously approved. And item 12B, board policies, administrative regulations, April 2020 CSBA board policy revisions, first reading. The board will review and revise board policies, administrative regulations from April 2020 CSBA board policy revisions as stated in the first reading. Any discussion or motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of the April 2020 CSBA board policy revisions.
Second motion.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Raise
Aye.
your thumb.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All
Aye.
unanimously approved. Item 13A, board governance matters, board stipend reduction. In light of district budget reductions, the board will consider possibility of reducing their monthly stipend, currently $273.21, to personally share in district cost reduction measures. And this is something that has been done in the past, as mentioned by Superintendent Vidales. When we come across these very restrictive economic times, the board likes to set the tone and show by example that, you know, we're all gonna do the best that we can to find ways to save a little bit of money here and there.
Let me,
so- Yes.
let me just clarify that it wasn't my idea to put it on there. Mr. Koo
All right.
requested it at the last meeting, so I don't know, Mr. Koo, if you want to share anything about this item.
I think exactly what President Ali said, just kind of in light of the request by our district to ask different departments to make reduction, I feel that it's the same that we should also bear some of that hit. And I think just even if it's a small impact that may help some programs or teachers or staff, I think that's what we should do as a board to like oversee our district.
I've already taken mine away, so so you don't have to take mine away because I already declined
So,
taking it. So what I would like to also might suggest, we might want to have the commission do the same thing. Ask them to follow our.
that would be a different item. We can certainly put
I
that on
understand
the
that.
next
I'm
item. Yeah.
making that suggestion,
Mhm.
especially since we have one administrator that works with both entities.
Mhm.
So it's just a suggestion that we might want to do the same, ask them to do the same thing.
Yeah. The last time that the board did it, and I checked with our business department, was in 2009, 2010. They reduced their stipend by 25% for 12 months.
All right. So I would suggest that we do something similar if we're going to make this reduction, that it would be for a 12-month period. Just because there's no guarantee that any of us will be on the board after this year for any reason. And I want to keep in mind people that we need to encourage to be on the board after us, that we don't want to have any extra barriers to encouraging people to run.
Excuse me, explain what you actually mean by that. Are you saying that
What I mean,
it would only be for us and not anyone who comes on the board? Or are we making
what I'm saying is that this is something that we're deciding, and hopefully for a year, but that we would revisit this and possibly if other departments aren't making any other cuts, then it could be discussed again too what the board wants to do about their stipend.
Exactly. Okay, I got it.
Thank you. So do we have a motion then?
Was there any discussion about a percentage of reduction? Departments and schools have been asked to reduce between 10 and 20% for this next school year in terms of their budgets. If you want to stay in that, I don't know, you guys can decide how you want to do this.
If nobody is absolutely depending on that small stipend we get, I call it small, but if I don't think it should be a percentage. I think it just be saying that for this coming year, we're giving up our stipend, unless somebody feels that they need it desperately.
Well, I don't think it's fair to say desperately needed.
No, well, you know what I mean.
I mean,
if someone's depending on it to, it should be that we feel good about giving up something, like you said, because we may be asking our employees to give something up. So if you want to wait and do it at that crucial time, then we can do it then. Whatever. It's not going to affect me at all. So I'm just trying to follow through on what is being said.
Yes, I understand. So I suggest that we keep it between that 10 to 20% reduction range for two reasons. Like I mentioned, there might be other board members who come after us, and we want to keep the stipend in there to encourage them not only to run, but to be able to use those funds to attend events that may have a cost. And, so we don't know everyone's personal situation. So I'd like to leave somewhat of a stipend there.
Okay.
So anyway, that's just my thoughts about it. What about Ms. Magno?
I agree. I think that it should at the very least have some kind of sunset to it, no matter what we decide, just because we do want to encourage more applications to come in to fill in vacancies. So I don't want to make a decision that affects people's decision to run for this board.
Okay. And Mr. Koo, did you want to say anything else?
I'll say like between the 10, 20%, I'd be okay with like 20%, 15%, just to make sure that it doesn't necessarily create an undue burden for if there is someone else who does have to fill some vacancy within the next 12 months or so.
Well, we're talking about percentages. Could you just say what the dollar amount is?
20% would be approximately $54 less.
So right now they're getting $100-something.
Right now, the stipend is $273.21. So 20% reduction would be about $54 less, which would be 219.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not a whole lot of reduction, but that
And
would, like you said, it might be okay.
And that's also including health and dental benefits.
No, this is just your stipend. Health and dental is completely separate.
But I'm just mentioning that is what is offered to
people
who want to run for the board.
Yeah, board members get offered health. Yeah.
I think at one time, I have to look back, in the dark ages when I first got on the board, it was probably $20 or $30 a meeting, but we did get the benefits. So I think the benefits are important for them.
Yes.
So you don't want to cut that.
Also, while we're at it, we might as well mention that our stipend is not as large as many other boards and definitely council. Where it becomes really almost like a part-time or a full-time job salary. So just in case anyone in the public is not aware of that fact.
Yeah, because nobody runs for the board to make money.
That's right. So really, and Mr. Vidal has mentioned in the past, it's more somewhat of a reimbursement for all the things that we need to do out in the community to make sure that we have a good presence in the community. So anyway, I've heard it sounded like 15% from Mr. Koo. That was your suggestion. Did you want to put in the form of a motion?
Or a dollar amount, at least?
Or actually, you said 20%.
Yeah, I said 20%. Vidal said about $54, you said?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make a motion. The board reduced its monthly stipend for 12 months at 20% or $54 to help ease with district cost reduction measures.
I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Unanimously approved. Good job, everyone. Item 13B, CSBA Annual Conference. Board members attend the CSBA Annual Education Conference to receive ongoing professional development in a variety of board member competencies. This year, the conference will be held in Anaheim on December 3rd through 5th, 2020, with the option to attend in person or virtually. There will be discussion to determine which board members would like to attend this year. The estimated cost of attending the conference for each person is $1,885, $610 regular registration. We're going to skip some of that. So $580 early registration and $399 virtual registration, $175 airfare round trip, $850 lodging for 3 nights, $250 for meals for 3 days funded through the board conference budget. The 2020 to 21 conference budget is approximately $7,900. Board members can also opt to attend a pre-conference. And, before we deliberate this, I just want to say that in the same spirit of reducing our stipend, whatever we can do to reduce costs in this area would be great as well. And since there's already an option on the table for virtual, that would be my preference as an individual board members to attend virtually this year.
I would like to say, is there a cost for that too? They didn't say that, right?
Yeah, it's a $399
Yeah, there's a registration
cost.
That's outrageous. I'm going to say that I think that the conference is a huge expense, and it's been looked upon from our other employees that we're going on a trip. And I would really think that that would be something that we could show that we're not having to do this, especially if you can do it virtually. If you can do it where we can get that information. And in fact, if one person gets it, they can share it with the rest of us. Pay $300 once. And I think isn't Clayton, aren't you going on there because you're on the board there?
You know, I was actually going to pass on this conference.
Well, good.
I know they've been mentioning potentially doing a virtual delegate assembly. I know we did that about a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
And it didn't seem to be a problem for me. And I think for most people, it wasn't an issue. So I know they're trying to figure that out, and I'm going to hope that they do a virtual in light of everything going on right now.
Yeah. I was disappointed with the last conference they had, big time disappointed. So I'm just thinking that we should not be spending that much money to go to Anaheim and go to Disneyland. My days of Disneyland are gone. What I'm just saying is I think that will show that we're not spending extra money. I just think we shouldn't go or send one person only.
All right, well,
that's my thought.
All right, I think right now we're just determining who wants to go and if they want to go virtually or in person. So my preference is virtual, and it sounds like Mr. Koo prefers to be virtual and you want to be virtual.
Yes.
As far as only one person doing it virtually, I'm not sure if I agree with that. I think, you know, as many of us who want to attend virtually is $400 as opposed to almost $2,000 if we had gone in person.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ms. Manio, what are your thoughts?
I agree. I think virtually, for so many reasons, is a much more viable option for us, not just only reducing the costs of attending, but just on a personal level. We don't know where COVID is going to be come December. We don't know if there's going to be another, a winter surge or anything like that. I don't know if airlines and or hotels will be able to refund us if we do. So I just don't think that's a risk that we should take with district money. And since the virtual option is available, I'm definitely more than welcome to that idea.
Okay.
All right, sounds great. So we have a consensus between four of us, and to reiterate that if all 5 board members attend virtually, that's about $2,000 as opposed to $2,000 per person if we go in person.
Oh, okay, that sounds good.
So Mr. Lee, I was actually going to just not attend to just the virtual part.
Okay, not even virtually.
No.
All right. So saved another
Mr. Koo, you would just there is no charge for your delegate assembly, right?
Yeah, there's no charge for delegate assembly, so it wouldn't be an expense for the district.
Okay.
All righty. So do we have a motion then? I guess, so Mr. Vidal, the motion would be to do what exactly?
So the motion, I think, from what I heard, the motion is to send any board member who wants to attend to the virtual conference.
Okay.
And Mr. Coos said no, and I don't think we need to say that. You can just let me know by. It doesn't look like there's a deadline for virtual registration, but if there is, I will let you know say, just let me know by September, beginning of September, if you're going to attend
Alright.
virtually.
And I would like to add that if those board members are going to do the virtual one, I think that they will bring back the information for us. And like we always have them come and talk to us, give a report on it. So the rest of us will get the information. So whoever wants to do it virtually, fine.
Alright.
Yeah, we will look into that. Otherwise, by September 1st, you will let me know.
Okay, sounds good.
Alright. So I will make the motion then that we approve for up to 4 board members to go to attend the CSBA annual conference for December 3rd through 5th, 2020, to attend the conference virtually.
So we're not going anywhere, right?
No.
Yeah, when you said go, and I thought, wait a minute, no. Okay, virtually. Okay, I'll second your motion.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous.
Okay.
I just realized though, Mr. Vidal, that Miss I know I may want to attend in person. We have no idea at this time, but we can just do another motion at that time.
Yeah, when she decides. I mean, you've authorized up to 4 virtually, and Mr. Koo has said he's not interested at all. So if she wants to go virtually, there's no additional action. But if she wants to go in person, then we would bring that back, just as we do with other professional development agreements that we enter into.
All right. Thanks very much. So actually, this one is says. Okay, it's the next one that requires roll call. So item 13C, resolution number 20-06-17C, affirming support of AB 2016 California Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum. The board will consider passage of resolution number 20-06-17C, affirming support of AB 2016 California Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum Draft. Action. So I don't know if anyone needs any more information about this. Did anyone want to make a statement or?
No, I'm glad to see this. I'm very happy to see this.
All right.
There is public comment on it.
All right. So we'll go ahead and take the public comment first, and then if there's any other questions or statements from board members, we'll do that after.
Ms. Manio, do you want to do one and then I'll do one that you didn't do? That way we can just jump from one to the next, or do you have them all printed, or not printed, available to read one after the other?
I have them, or we could share it. It doesn't matter to me.
Why don't you read the first one and then I'll read one. I think there's a total of 3 or 4. How many?
Well, let me follow what you're doing. Are you saying you have received other samples?
No, we have, we received during this COVID period, we received public comment through electronically. And so Ms. Manio will read the public comment submitted by members of our community.
Was it because they saw ours on the agenda, or it just sent something?
It's probably because they saw this on the agenda and they wanted to give public comment on this item.
I had wished you had sent us a copy so we could have also read it ahead of time. But
yeah, we did. We received it.
That would be the respectful thing to do, for all of the board members would get something and read it and be prepared.
No, they were submitted this evening, right before 7:05. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So.
Just tonight?
Yes.
Oh.
So just like a public comment at a regular meeting.
Okay.
Submit a comment card.
Okay, go ahead.
So,
sorry.
Quite long. Do you want me to read everything?
Well,
yes, go ahead. They have 2 minutes, so
okay.
You can read it.
Cut me off, I guess, when you need to.
Let's give them respect and let's do it.
Okay. This is from Samina Uzman. Dear members of the Jefferson Elementary School District, my name is Samina Uzman and I am the Government Relations Coordinator for the Bay Area Office of the Council on American Islamic Relations. I'm writing to urge the board to support the Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum and inclusion of Arab American Studies. Hatred stems from fear and fear stems from lack of education. There's a lot of misinformation or lack of understanding about Arab Americans, which has likely resulted in the increase of hate incidences and bullying in schools, which is why it is critical to have an Arab American Studies program that is included in the California Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum. CAIR is the nation's largest Muslim civil liberties group whose mission is to enhance the understanding of Islam, promote civil rights, promote justice, and empower American Muslims. We receive numerous reports from students who have been harassed and bullied because they are Muslim or perceived to be Muslim. Every other year, we survey Muslims from across California to ask about their experience in middle and high schools. In our last report of the 1,500 students we surveyed, we found that 40% of the respondents were bullied for being Muslim, which is double the national statistic. We found that 29% reported offensive comments from teachers, administrators, and other officials. This is very concerning given that teachers set the environment for the classroom. While not all Muslims are Arab and not all Arabs are Muslims, we truly believe that the Arab American Studies program that is incorporated in Asian American Studies in the model ethnic studies curriculum would be essential to protecting our students from harassment and bullying. Please support the California Model Curriculum for JESD. Feel free to contact Samina Uzman. Should I?
I've got a statement here from Vice Mayor of the City of Daly City, Ms. Jesslyn Manolo. To the Jefferson Elementary School Board of Trustees, I write to ask for your support of the Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum draft written by teachers and scholars from across California. We have never seen adequate representation of the narratives of people of color in our textbooks, despite the enormous diversity of the community we live in. Please support the proposed school board resolution to prevent the censorship and removal of Arab American, Pacific Islander, and Central American studies from the California Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum. Growing up in Daly City, I did not learn about the history of my community, not until I reached college. I remember in elementary school searching in the library to find only one book about the Philippines that I could identify with. This was unfortunate. Young people want to know who they are. Without ethnic studies, you're depriving them their own his, her stories in their classrooms. If I learned about the history of my community with my classmates in the diverse city of Daly City and San Mateo County, I truly believe this would have been a huge impact on peers in our development. If I had ethnic studies in elementary school with my peers, I believe it would have ignited the development of our critical thinking skills, confidence, and self-worth at an early age. I believe I've seen firsthand the impact of ethnic studies on lives. It changed mine. I'm thankful I graduated with Asian American Studies in the College of Ethnic Studies at San Francisco State University, which has informed my analysis and direction towards serving my community as a public servant. In addition, I received my master's in public administration with an emphasis in public management to humbly serve the community I was raised in. With both these disciplines, I know it is imperative you add California Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum 2 in its entirety. You all have the opportunity to change the discourse of what the educational system has been lacking. Stories of our communities of color who have contributed to the local and national fabric of the United States can be included. Just one more paragraph here. Hold on. Tried to stop my timer. Okay. You all have the opportunity to change the discourse of what the educational system has been lacking. Stories of our communities of color who have contributed to the local and national fabric of the U.S. can be included in the dialogue and can be centered in the discourse. This is 2020, and our narrative must include the diversity of what this county reflects in the educational system. Therefore, the current attacks on ethnic studies and Arab American studies are completely unjust, and we should not stand for them. This resolution is moving a step for social justice. Please vote yes this evening to support this.
I also have a summary of a comment by El Bakri Salah, a community member who is in support of ethnic studies and Arab American studies. And that's all I have so far, unless you have something else, Bernie.
No, I think so. That's it. Mr. Bakro was not able to submit his full written comment, but we know he is in support of it.
Okay,
All right.
so do we have we having a discussion only on this one, or can we now branch out and discuss everything?
Well, I'm not sure what you're asking.
Okay, tonight on this agenda is talking about this one, this particular resolution.
Oh,
Are
yeah.
we going to make the changes now to include other ethnic groups, or are we not letting the public know about it?
Okay, I see what you're asking. So
Brown Act.
before we even go that far, I just want to say that we are 2 steps ahead of this. We have already approved to have ethnic studies in our schools, which hasn't been publicized enough.
Right.
And, you know, and it was brought to our attention that we're the first pre-K through 8 district in the country to do it. So I wanted to say that first. Now there's a push, you know, other districts in our area have approved this resolution recently, but not all of those districts even have an ethnic studies program yet. So what we've already approved to have ethnic studies, and we're working with our consultant who's working with our teachers to create the lessons. So it would be my hope that we wouldn't exclude anything that we've already, you know, negotiated with and discussed with our consultant. So I don't know if that.
Yeah, it might be helpful perhaps if I give context for why this resolution is coming to the board. In 2016, I believe, there was a bill to bring ethnic studies to California classrooms, and we've been discussing this over the last 4 years, and we've been waiting for something, for guidance, and ultimately we just decided to move on without receiving the guidance. But what happened is that they had educators from the ethnic studies field write a model curriculum and submit it to the Department of Education and to the board, California Board of Education. As it was being reviewed, and someone can correct me if I've got the history wrong, as it was being reviewed, it was pulled off, and the Department of Education said that they need to revise it. And the particular comments that were submitted at the time asked for specific ethnicities to be pulled out of the ethnic studies model curriculum. So this resolution, one, says we need the ethnic studies model curriculum, and we needed to include these groups that were pulled out by the proponents of who wanted to you know, who wanted to kill this essentially. So this resolution is to pull that, to say that this board supports the model curriculum as it stands and as it was written. Is that correct? Those of you who are familiar with the topic?
Basically, except for one thing, are we talking when you say down, way down almost at the end where it says to support communities of color? When we say of color, does that mean all of the ethnic groups? That's the only word that I think they're looking at it being only one particular group. But other than that, does it sound like?
I think it represents, another way to say it would be non-white ethnicities.
I mean, I just want to make sure whatever we do is going to not come back and say, well, you got this group and you got to do that group. I mean, basically, if there's a way that we word it that says everybody needs to be respected for what ethnic group they belong to, Doesn't matter what group it is. Everyone needs to be respected and
Well,
valued.
well, at this time, we're not discussing adding any language to the resolution or anything
Okay.
like that. But okay, thank you. So
Would you like this?
in the future, oh yes, and as a matter of fact, I believe you said you wanted to read the whole resolution. Correct?
No. Someone said to read it, and then you asked me I could read it or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
so
and I mean,
if
I
you
don't think
wanna-
we have to read it necessarily. Has everyone read it? And then, because
Okay.
we're not going to get comments from the audience, are we? Is anybody
No,
watching?
you've received the comments already from the
Yeah.
audience.
Yeah. So, okay. So basically, I think this is fine. This is the way we wrote it. And it was talking about color because that is one that's standing out that has been important to us at that time when we wrote this. If you feel that the word color is making a difference, then can we do it in such a way that we don't use that word then or something? Or, I mean, I don't know what to say because I like it just the way it is, but I don't,
Yeah.
Sounds like some people want it different.
No, I think we're all on the same page. The whole purpose was to support it tonight as is. And the only thing that's different between our resolution and some of the other districts is that we added in that we actually have already implemented ethnic studies.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Then I say let's vote on it the way it is.
Okay.
I'll make the motion that we vote for it unless somebody else wants to carry on the conversation.
I do
think
just
Ms.
want, thank you. I do just want to make a point, a couple maybe. One, that this is just a draft pretty much at the state level. This is not a hard line thing set in stone. They're actually still drafting this. From my understanding, and the approval is not actually until 2021. So that's what we're just approving. We're symbolically approving our support for it, even though we as a district are way beyond the 8 ball here, which I definitely commend our district for doing. We've already gone above and beyond this curriculum draft, and to say something to Superintendent Vidales's comments earlier about specific groups that were targeted to be omitted. There's a reason why the language is what it was in our public comments, is that there were talks about omitting certain movements. So I think that although we vote in support for this model curriculum, that it is just a model, and that the district should decide for ourselves a more customized curriculum based on the diversity of students that we have.
And I just want to add that we have had several students that came from the other ethnic group that was mentioned that were leaders. And I mean, I was amazed, and the family always comes and talks to me because we support them and they are very successful. So if we were to change it, it's almost like saying, well, we didn't treat them good. You know, I think this was made for a purpose. Let's vote on it. And we can always later, if we think we have to add more, because more people are going to come and say, well, what about me? What about me? I mean, hey, the Greeks might come and say that they're overlooked, okay? No, I'm only kidding. But you know what I mean? So can we vote on this and go on with this?
Yeah, we can vote on, but I just want to be clear that the whole purpose for ethnic studies was for certain groups that were already excluded and omitted. Any other groups that come after this, most likely they're already part of the general curriculum.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
So it sounds like we're all in agreement and on one accord and wholeheartedly support this in the original intent of the authors of the model curriculum. So who would like to make the motion?
Well,
We
I'll
do
make
have a
the,
motion already by
Yeah.
Mrs. Brizuela. We are
Yes.
looking
Oh.
for a second.
yes.
Second.
Second.
Good. I heard 2 seconds, but that's good.
All right, we have a second. No, I was just saying that we needed a second.
Oh, I know.
So seconded by Trustee Munn. All those in favor, say aye,
Aye.
and raise
Aye.
your thumb.
Aye.
And
Well,
those opposed, nope. So all ayes, all affirmative, and we have approved. Good job.
And I'd like to say that this is something that Shaquille and I very much wanted to have us to do this. And thank you, Shaquille, because we need to let people, especially those that think we're not doing a good job, to know that we are. We are. And we have really good students, and we don't have the same issues that maybe some other places have. But we can be a role model for it. Thank you.
Thank you, I agree. So with that, that's a perfect segue into item 14, which is governance team member comments, reports, and board meeting reflection. So we'll go ahead and start with you, Ms. Brizuela.
Okay. I picked out for the guidelines, we will work towards the future, learning from the past. I think that was kind of cool. I didn't expect it to be work that way, but it did. And I just want to say, it's a real pleasure for me serving with you guys, all of you, because we're really making good steps. We're going forward, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Mr. Koo.
I selected, we will keep our focus on the best interest for our students. Also, before I forget, just want to wish my dad as well a happy Father's Day this Sunday.
Very good. And Ms. Manio.
I also picked the same. And I know that we're gonna have some tough waters that we have to navigate through this summer. So, you know, we've got our we're laced up and ready to go. So I appreciate you all being here and, you know, holding the course.
All right, very good. Mr. Vidales.
Yes, I selected today focus on the best interest of students. It's vital that we do that as we have these conversations.
Nice. And I also chose we will keep our focus on the best interest of our students. And just want to say that I'm also very happy tonight, Ms. Brizuela, just everything that we're dealing with as a community and as a nation. And as we always say, we're not perfect here. There's always room for improvement. However, we are proactive and we think ahead and we work together in the right way. So, you know, I'm putting a challenge out there to the community to challenge us and hold us accountable and to make sure that we follow up to make sure that our district is doing all that we can to help not only prevent the spread of COVID-19, but the spread of racism and intolerance and violence in our community and in our school district. And
Can I add something to what you said, please?
oh yes, by all
I'm
means.
on a roll now. I think that the most important thing we can do for any of our students and for our community is to set good role models and to let them know that every child is important and every child counts. And I think if everybody knows that, it will work. And I think if we work with our police departments and other agencies, in fact, we used to have firemen that came and read to our students. If we can try to bring some of that back, what a great world this will be, and what a lot of respect we'll have for each other, especially our children. They'll respect all of this. So that's just something for thought.
Okay, thanks very much. And just another reminder or request for Mr. Vidales to put this on a future agenda and invite our student services coordinator to talk about this.
Yes, I'll have a conversation with the school board president about when would be a good time to put it on.
Okay.
Soon. Oops. Poor Bernie.
Yeah. All right, so item 15, persons wishing to address the board on closed session items. Was there any?
I have
No comments, not on this one. We don't have any for 15. We do have comments on 7C, which come next.
Right, okay. So 7C would be persons wishing to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. And we do not have the liberty to respond, but we will pay attention to whatever these comments are and follow up on them in the appropriate way.
So President Ali, I have two comments. Bear with me, I'm going to read them both. This is from AFT members. Dear JESD board members, we the teachers of SBA are saddened to hear that the district is going to be underfunded for the 2020-2021 school year. We understand that these are difficult times and that none of us want to make any cuts. That being said, we're asking that considerations be made to allow employees on the front lines serving children, teachers and classified employees such as custodians to incur minimal impact. During the COVID-19 crisis, teachers' job descriptions have changed and their workload has increased significantly. We have had to teach ourselves and our students at the same time, and many of us had to change our entire way of teaching overnight. We tracked down children, helped out parents, navigated technology, changed in-person lessons into online lessons, learned new instructional strategies to engage students in distance learning, made sure all of our students have received computers and hotspots, made videos, developed incentives, and countless other tasks to ensure student learning continued seamlessly and to enrich our students' lives while learning from home. To expect teachers to take a pay cut after all the work we have done to provide the best education for our students from home during COVID-19 is asking too much. We are not asking for a raise, though we are asking for teachers to keep their salaries as is for the year. Many of the teachers have been working in the district for over 20 years. In this time, we've seen many changes to the way the district office is staffed and structured. LCAP funding has allowed the expansion of positions. However, with decreased funding and enrollment, we are asking that the district office revisit their structures and make administrative cuts as other districts are doing. Examples of modifications made over the years are Assistant Superintendent of Ed Services, formerly called Assistant Sup of Curriculum and Instruction, used to not have a Director of Teaching and Learning, Director of Technology, and a Director of Student Services to assist him or her. Tasks such as textbook adoption, committee facilitation, and textbook orders used to be adjunct duties for principals. Assistant Superintendent of Ed Services did not have a principal on special assignment managing summer school programs. That task was distributed to administrative interns used under their oversight. During the 2003-2004 budget cuts, when teachers took 3 furlough days, the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, currently Ed Services position, was restructured to become a director position rather than an assistant superintendent. Tasks were redistributed or cut to compensate for the reduced salary. There is now a Director of Technology, a newer position with a department that has been restructured multiple times over the past 5 years. The Director of ELD is now a 60% position with a 3.5-hour aide. Further restructuring can be done here, such as eliminating the ELD director position and adding the duties to the Director of Teaching and Learning, since there are no longer coaches to oversee. This is not an exhaustive list of changes over time, but a few examples showing that it is possible for the positions to be restructured and eliminated at the district office. We ask that considerations be made to do so. We do understand that the decision is a difficult one for the district and the board to have to make. However, we feel that it is unconscionable. We know that that's a tough word. To feel that the teachers should have to take the brunt of the cuts, especially as our workload is and job description is evolving rapidly during these uncharted times. As a staff, we agree that while it is totally deserved, we do not feel the need to ask for a raise this year. We agree to freeze our salaries where they are. However, we do not agree to taking what amounts close to a 10-day pay cut for this coming year. I have another comment.
Can you hold on a second? Sure. Mr. Vidales, I just want to make sure that we don't have any misinformation, since we've already given our board comments before this now. But there's no cuts for this school year.
We can't discuss it. We can't discuss it. Let her just read the letter.
Excuse me, but I can ask Mr. Vidales to clarify if we have cuts this year or not.
No, it's not on the agenda for you to ask that right now. She's reading a letter, and now we're putting something else into it. Let her finish, please.
She's on. She did finish.
I have another one.
Right. Go ahead.
Okay.
Well, hold on. Excuse me.
Okay.
Mr. Vidales, could you just answer my question, please? Are we cutting
Violating the
anything
Brown
this year?
Act. You're violating the Brown Act. Yes, you are. You cannot
No, I'm
discuss
not.
an item. You just got done saying it earlier.
He's-
When you bring
this is not
something in
Talking
the
to the person.
This is not a discussion.
Respectfully.
This is just a
Thank you.
clarification. There are no cuts in this budget besides the 10 to 20% at sites, as you approved.
Thank you.
Oh,
That's all
boy.
that's all the clarification that I needed.
Okay. Shall I continue?
Yes,
Okay.
please. Ms. Brizuela, could you please let me facilitate the meeting, though?
I will, but when I see someone breaking the Brown Act, I speak up. Go ahead.
Okay, but also, you do not take over the meeting and tell people to
I'm
talk
not
and not
taking-
talk. That's all I'm asking.
I'm not taking over the meeting.
And I'm
Sorry.
not violating the Brown Act, and I don't want to argue on a public format about this. So if you want to discuss that with me later, I'm open to it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I am Mark Allen Pond, second grade teacher from JFK. Thank you so much for this time. It was previously recommended to the board to reduce financial commitments and free up funds for other district purposes. The following reductions determined by the board were suggested for the 2020-2021 budget to reach their desired outcome. Administrator positions, reduce the contribution to staff, extra school administrators, eliminate the contribution for 0.5 full-time employment dean at SBA, eliminate the contribution for half-time dean at JFK and half-time assistant principal at FDR, reduce the contribution for half-time assistant principal at FDR to half-time dean. I understand that the budget extremely tight this year, and there is a great deal of uncertainty with the COVID-19 pandemic. However, eliminating these positions is a mistake. SBA is the largest elementary school in the district with the largest student population. Both JFK and FDR are the two schools with the most SDC classes on their campus in the district. FDR has approximately 60 special ed students, and JFK has 5 SDC classes with approximately 70 SDC students. Because these two sites host several SDC classes, there are much greater needs at these schools. With each special ed student comes IEPs, numerous meetings, the need to carefully plan and schedule mainstreaming into a general ed classroom, making sure that there is proper aid coverage, and much, much more. Many of these IEP meetings easily run 1 to 2 hours, and there are several in a week. Having a second administrator at these sites is absolutely essential for not only the SDC students, but the general ed students. The second administrator not only helps to make sure that all of the students have their needs met, but that the students are kept safe. One administrator for each site with their large student population and unique challenges that they face is clearly not enough. Even in these difficult and uncertain times, we need to make sure that the needs and safety of our students are met and these administrator positions are not eliminated. We need to make sure that these sites have the necessary administrative support that they need. Thank you very much, Mark Allen Pond. That was all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a note, in the future, if we need to move 7C, I think we should move it before, what is that, 14? Yeah, we should move it before
That's
14.
noted. I don't believe you'll have to do it again, but yes, noted.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so we are coming to the close of the meeting, and we will take a 5-minute break. So we'll convene to closed session and reopen that session at 9:58. And we're not closing in memory of anyone this evening?
Yeah, aren't we?
I'm not aware of anybody.
Okay. So with that, we'll call meeting adjourned. And we'll convene in 5 minutes, which will be 9:58 or so.
Yes.
Let's see.